Bernie for 40 years. First as when he was mayor of Burlington, and then as he became the congressman from Vermont, and then as he became our senator. And throughout that entire time, he has been honest, consistent, unwavering in his commitment to providing for people at the lower ends of the economic spectrum, of people who are oppressed, and building a country that truly embraces all of its citizens. When he first started out in Burlington, he won an improbable election for mayor by 10 votes. And, he defeated a long-term incumbent, old crony, business-favoring, machine politician. And when he got in, the old cronies were still around, and they were all against him. They were all trying to sabotage him. And Bernie prevailed, and eventually he even won them over to his side, because what he is about what America is about, truth and justice. So, when I was being introduced, they talked about the flavor I came out with last time Bernie ran, Bernie's Yearning. Well, I don't know if this is like real public media out there, or whether this is just it's real public media out there. They're gonna, well, I'll give you a little hint about the new flavor that's coming out. It's just a little Vorspice, as they call it in my religion. The new flavor, I'm not really authorized to do this, but I'm gonna do it anyhow because, I feel at home with you guys. What can I say? The new flavor is called Bernie's Back. And it's got that same big chocolate disc on top, representing all the money that's going to the top 1%. But the ice cream this time is hot cinnamon for holding politicians' feet to the fire. And down the middle of the pint is a butter crunch toffee stick in the shape of a spine to demonstrate that Bernie's spine is straight, it ain't gonna waver, and he is going to do exactly what he's gonna tell you he's gonna do. You can believe him. He is the real thing. He is not some other politician windbag. What can I say? For 40 years, I'm here to tell you, he's the guy who's going to make it happen, who's going to transform our government from one that has continually favored the interests of the wealthy and corporations over the interests of everybody else. And now, I would like to introduce to you the one, the only, the original, the first guy who started to have small donor finance campaigns, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Well, let me thank all of, I've been doing a lot of talking lately. Let me thank all of you for coming out this morning. I want to touch on some issues, and then we'll open it up for your questions and your comments. But before I do that, I wanted to thank Ben Cohen, who I've known for a very, very long time. Way back when, in 1928, I think, Herbert Hoover ran for president. He said, if elected, there'll be a chicken in every pot. Well, we think in 2020, it's a Ben & Jerry's pint in every freezer. What do you think? And if that can't win me the election, I don't know what can, but all right. We are here today to make it clear that we have got to do everything that we can to defeat the worst president in the history of this country. And when I talk about the worst president, I am not just talking about somebody who tried to throw 32 million people off of the health care they had. I'm not just talking about somebody who told the American people that his tax plan would benefit everybody and not the rich, but 83% of the benefits end up over 10 years going to the top 1%. I'm not talking about one of the few people in the world who does not understand that climate change is real. I'm not talking about a president who promised the people of Nevada and the people of America that he would not cut Medicaid and not cut Medicare and not cut Social Security, but in his budgets, he did exactly that. So I'm not just talking about somebody who is a pathological liar. Now I got to get to the really bad things. Those are his attributes. Now we get to the... And the real bad thing, I mean, the ugliest thing that he has done, which no president that any of us can remember has done. There have been conservative presidents, no question about it. But what he is intentionally trying to do is win political votes by dividing the American people up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our religion or our gender or our sexual orientation. That is an absolute outrage. What a president of the United States is supposed to be doing, no matter what your political views are, is you bring people together. We are all Americans. Don't divide us up. So we have got to work as hard as we possibly can in Nevada and Vermont and all over this country to make certain that Donald Trump is not reelected. Let me just say this also. I want to talk a little bit about what kind of makes my campaign a bit different than other campaigns. I was here in Nevada, not here, but I was 4 years ago running all over your state, talking to people. And 4 years ago, the ideas that I introduced into the political debate at that point were seen by the establishment media, by the establishment political class as radical and extreme ideas. Some of you may remember that. All right? People said, nobody, you know, Bernie's a nice guy or he's not a nice guy, but his ideas don't make sense to anybody. Now, 4 years ago, I want you to remember the ideas that I talked about, which were seen to be crazy and radical. I said that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty. We should raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. Remember that? Well, 4 years ago, that was a radical idea. Well, guess what's happened since? 7 states have passed legislation raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and the U.S. Congress will likely do the same within the next couple of months. 4 years ago, I said that we have a crumbling infrastructure, that is our roads and our bridges and our wastewater systems and our water systems. We should invest $1 trillion and create 15 million decent paying jobs. And people said, $1 trillion, that's so much money. That's what everybody is talking about now, and that is exactly what we have got to do. This is America. Our roads and our bridges should not be collapsing. Now, 4 years ago, I said that, you know, maybe 50, 60 years ago, if you graduated high school, you can go out and make it into the middle class. You didn't need a higher education. But what I said 4 years ago is that the world and the economy and education and technology have all changed. And that for the young people of this country today, if they're going to make it into the middle class, if they're going to get a decent job in a competitive global economy, they need, regardless of their income, a higher education or technical training. And that's why I proposed the idea of making public colleges and universities tuition free. and substantially reducing student debt. Okay? 4 years ago, that was a radical idea, not so radical anymore. 4 years ago, you had folks out there, Republicans, and I have to tell you, to be honest, some Democrats, talking about cutting Social Security. Now, I want you all to know, which I suspect you already do, that when you see somebody on television telling you, we need entitlement reform, do you all know what they're talking about? Okay. They're talking about cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And a number of years ago, I helped form a caucus in the United States Senate called the Defending Social Security Caucus, all right? Because I know and you know that in Nevada and in Vermont and all over this country, there are people 80, 85, 90 years of age who are trying to survive on $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year Social Security. And my God, I have no idea in the world how anybody at 85 or 90 can survive on $12,000, $13,000, or $14,000. But there are millions of folks who are trying to do that. So no, I helped lead the fight in the United States Senate to say very clearly, no, we are not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security benefits for those who need it. And we do that by lifting the cap on taxable income. All right? So right now you got somebody who's making $10 million a year, somebody who's making $100,000 or $160,000 a year. They're both paying the same amount into Social Security because there's a cap. You can't tax income above a certain level. Okay, we're going to lift that cap starting at $250,000. Small number of people will pay the same percentage of their income in taxes as somebody making $80,000 a year. And when you do that, you can raise benefits and extend the life of Social Security for another 50 years. Okay? And then there's another issue that I have been working on for a very, very long time. And that is taking on the greed and, in many cases, the illegal behavior of the pharmaceutical industry in this country. Last year, the 10 major drug companies in America, hold your hats here, 10 major drug companies in America made $69 billion in profit. 10 companies, $69 billion in profit. And you know how they managed to make so much money? Because they are charging you by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Do you all know that? All right, I want to tell you a story. Way back when I was representing Vermont in the U.S. House, back in 1999, I think, I took a busload of women from northern Vermont, from the St. Albans area, Franklin County, who were dealing with breast cancer. These were mostly working class women dealing with breast cancer. And we took about an hour and a half trip up to Montreal, Canada. You know why we went to Montreal, Canada? It wasn't for a sightseeing tour. Why did we go? All right, this is what happened. And then we had arranged all of this stuff beforehand. And I'll never forget this. One of these things, that stays in your mind. We went into this pharmacy in Montreal, and these were women, working class women who were struggling with breast cancer. No easy thing to deal with. Walked into the pharmacy, and a widely prescribed breast cancer drug called tamoxifen, okay? They went in there, they purchased that drug, same bottle, same damn thing, for 1/10 of the price they were paying in Vermont. 1/10 of the price, okay? Now, out of that trip, I was the first member of Congress to do something like that. Other members did it, senators did it. And today, there are millions of Americans who, unfortunately, are having to buy their medicine online or even visiting other countries to buy the medicine they need. In the United States of America, we should not be forced to pay the highest prices in the world. We should not be in a situation, listen to this if you can believe it. Today, 1 out of 5 Americans who walks into a doctor's office and gets a prescription for their illness cannot afford to fill that prescription. Today in America, and many of you may have had this experience, people walk into the pharmacy and the price of your medicine is doubled. And you say, well, why is it doubled? And the answer is they can double it, they can triple it, they can do anything they want because there is no legislation to control them. And the reason for that deals with the broader issue of a corrupt political system in which big money interests dominate what goes on in the United States Congress and in legislatures all over this country. All right? So imagine that. You have people dealing with diabetes, dealing with cancer, dealing with heart disease, dealing with Alzheimer's, dealing with all of the terrible illnesses that people are coping with. And these drug companies who are making unbelievable profits, who are paying their CEOs outrageous compensation packages, they can raise their price to any level they want. Now, we have 3 approaches that we are going to use to substantially lower drug prices in this country. First one is pretty easy. It says that Medicare should negotiate drug prices with the pharmaceutical industry. Now, you got a pricing system in the pharmaceutical world which is so Byzantine, ain't nobody understands it. Every hospital pays a different price. Medicaid pays a different price than Medicare. Medicare pays a different price than the VA. In fact, the VA, Veterans Administration, has for years negotiated prices with the drug companies. That is why their prices are the lowest in the country. And that's what we have to do with Medicare. Second area that we can make some progress is I am not a great believer in unfettered free trade. I should tell you that because I think it has hurt working people a whole lot. But if we are importing products from all over the world, do not tell me that we cannot safely import low-cost prescription drugs made by the same exact manufacturer from Canada or the UK or France. Of course we can. Distributors and pharmacists can do that, and they can resell those products at a substantially lower price. The third area, which is probably the simplest, and kind of what Canada does right now, is to, and we've introduced legislation to do this, which simply looks at what other countries around the world are paying. That's all. And we determine and we tell the drug companies, this is what you will receive. And if we do that, and I will do that as President of the United States, we will lower the cost of prescription drugs in this country by half. By half. Cut it in half. Now, you may think that that is a radical idea. It is not a radical idea because that's what people all over the world are already paying. So that's what we're going to do, and I think we're going to save a lot of lives when we do that. Just a few more points. I want to talk about the economy. The economy today has very low unemployment. That's good. When Obama came in 2010, after that horrible, horrible Wall Street crash, unemployment was 10%. By the time he left, it was down to 4.5%. That was real progress under difficult times. Today, it is even lower at 3.5%. That's good. And you got Trump saying, oh, the economy is booming, it's booming, it's doing great. Well, it ain't doing so great for ordinary Americans. You got half of the people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck. You know what that means, paycheck to paycheck? I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. I know what that means. And it means if you're a worker in Nevada or Vermont and your car breaks down and you need a $500 repair, well, you know what? If you don't have that $500, you can't get to work. And if you can't get to work, what happens? You get fired. If you get fired, you can't take care of your kids. There are people all over this country today who are sick. You know, they're feeling ill. They feel ill week after week, month after month. They're afraid to go to the doctor. You know why? Because they're going to find out that they have a terrible illness. They're going to have to go to the hospital, and they cannot afford to pay a $50,000 or $100,000 hospital bill. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Half of our people should not be forced to live paycheck to paycheck. 40% of older workers in America, 55 years of age or older, you know how much money they have in the bank as they await retirement? Zero. Scared to death. What happens when they're 65 and they lose their jobs? Meanwhile, while the middle class for 40 years has been shrinking, anybody here know how much the average worker in America today makes in real inflation accounted for dollars compared to what he or she made 43 years ago? Anyone know? The same thing. So you know why people are angry? They're angry because after 43 years of an huge explosion of technology, increase in worker productivity, they're going nowhere in a hurry, and they are very worried about their kids. All right? And you know why they are worried about their kids? Because they should be worried about their kids. Because for the first time in the modern history of this country, our younger generation, if we do not turn it around, will likely have a lower standard of living than their parents. Meanwhile, while the middle class struggles, while we got 40 million people living in poverty, the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. The wealthiest 3 families in America own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. Got that? This is more wealth inequality than at any time since the 1920s. And today in America, while people are working 2 or 3 jobs to pay the bills, 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%. And the reason that the rich get much richer is that they don't put their money under the mattress. They invest it in politics, which is why, by the way, if elected president, I will do everything I can to overturn that disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. I may be old-fashioned, but I believe that democracy is one person, one vote, not billionaires buying election. Last point I want to make. 4 years ago, when I was in Nevada and all over this country, I said what at that point seemed to be a radical idea. But that idea turns out not to be so radical, and it is that health care is a human right, not a privilege. The United States, as many of you may know, is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. And the result of that in our dysfunctional health care system is that today, 34 million Americans have no health insurance, and far more than that are underinsured with high copayments and high deductibles, which means that even if you have insurance, you still don't go to the doctor when you should because you can't afford the deductible or the copayment. Meanwhile, and it's important that we all understand this as we debate health care, the United States spends twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. So let me say it again. 34 million uninsured, even more underinsured. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And at the end of all that, we end up spending as a nation twice as much per person on health care as any other major country, all of whom guarantee health care to all people. And that is why 4 years ago, I began the discussion. And as president, I intend to end the discussion to finally bring a Medicare for all single-payer program to the United States of America. And I want to say one last word on Medicare. Medicare is a very strong program. Medicare is a popular program, but Medicare is not a perfect program and has to be improved. Right now, Medicare for seniors, people 65 or older, does not cover dental care. Am I right? It does not cover hearing aids. Am I right? Does not cover eyeglasses. The Medicare for All proposal that we have introduced will cover dental care, eyeglasses, and hearing aids. So let me just conclude by saying this. We are living in an unprecedented moment in American history, and that's just the simple truth. We have a president who is a pathological liar, a president who is trying to move us into an authoritarian form of society, who either does not understand the Constitution of the United States or has disdain for the Constitution, a president who is trying to divide us up in a very un-American way. So our job is to bring our people together. Our job is to fight for economic, social, racial, and environmental justice, and that is what my campaign is about. We have now over 1 million volunteers in every state and every congressional district in this country who are prepared to stand up, to defeat Trump, and to create the kind of country based on justice that you and I know we can become. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Questions or comments? I see a, one at a time, we're good. I see a woman back there. Yeah, ma'am. Yep, yes. Do we got a microphone? Wait, you got a mic there.
Senator, I had a question on your proposal for Medicare and for Social Security.
Good.
Might either of those programs require means testing?
No, not in my view. I mean, I understand the question, but I'll tell you what, the strength of those, we can say, okay, in Social Security, you know, if you're above $100,000 a year, we're going to cut your benefits and all that, Medicare the same. Once you begin down that path, today it could be 100,000, 2 years later it's 80,000, it's 60,000, and then it becomes a welfare program for the poor. I believe that healthcare and Social Security must be universal programs, that every single person gets the benefits that they deserve. Now, the other side of the equation is we are going to demand that the wealthy and large profitable corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. All right? So you may say, well, why does Warren Buffett need Social Security? He's doing well with his tens of billions of dollars. And my answer is Warren will get his Social Security, but he's going to pay a hell of a lot of taxes based on his income and his wealth. Okay, ma'am, right here, orange shirt. Yeah.
Yes, Senator Sanders, what is your feeling on the fact that there are 25, I believe, people now, Democrats, saying they're running for president?
Yeah, I don't think it's, you know, last time I was here, it was a little bit simpler. There were two people. Secretary Clinton and myself. And, you know, we started out in that campaign way behind. We ended up losing by 5 points. I had hoped we could win, but we didn't. And by the way, this time we hope and expect to win. But look, I know, I don't know all of them, but many of them are senators who I see every day. And they're good people. I know them all. And my hope is that this campaign will be run on an issue-oriented basis where we'll have serious discussions about the issues facing this country. And my hope and expectation, it will not be some campaign where people are trying to salvage and destroy the character of other people. I think the American people are sick and tired of that. And you're not going to hear me disparage, you know, people who are friends of mine who may disagree with me on issues. But I think, it is an opportunity for the American people to hear folks from different perspectives and to analyze them. So I don't have a problem with it, to be honest with you. But obviously, it's a very different dynamic. No candidate, I suspect, is going to get, 50. I think Secretary Clinton got 53% of the vote, whatever it is, and that's probably not going to happen. Everybody will have lower votes. Yes, ma'am. Here's a mic.
First of all, I support you because of your stand on health insurance. Presently, I pay $1,306 a month for my health insurance. In the town, I was a high school teacher for almost 40 years, and we didn't pay into Social Security. So I pay $1,306 a month, and the town where I worked in Massachusetts has to pay $1,306. So, sir, for me to live here, my health insurance company gets $2,612 a month for my health insurance. And I'm
Let me just interrupt you. $2,600 a month. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's $30,000 a year for health insurance. Does anybody think that that is vaguely sane? All right. And this is what's going on all over the country. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if you are today a family of 4, independently employed, you know how much you're paying for health insurance? You're paying $28,000 a year for health care costs. And this is unsustainable. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Not at all, sir. And I'm willing to pay more, certainly not more than that, but I'm willing to pay because I didn't pay into Medicare, but I think $1,306, sir, is a little exorbitant. Secondly, I really support your education plan as I taught high school history for 40 years. But, sir, the only thing I would suggest is have tests. In other words, not everybody, is going to be, A+ in college. So perhaps if you had tests, as they do in some European countries where I taught for a time, everybody takes a test, and if you pass the test, you can go on as far in school as you can free. And along the way, they have, as you suggested, sir, technical schools so that people, there's no disgrace, certainly, sir, in being a plumber or electrician. And then one final thing. I'll shut up.
Well, let me just say this. The point that I do agree with you on is not everybody has the ability or the academic, ability or the desire to go on to college. But God knows that in this country we need plumbers and we need sheet metal workers and we need carpenters, all of which can make a good living. And we have to make sure that those young people get that training as well. All right, let me ask another question. Let's get to somebody else.
I just one final thing, sir. Please stress, because I'm doing this for another gentleman, please stress that socialism is not communism.
Okay.
That's very, very important that you stress that.
Thank you. Thank you. I will, matter of fact. Okay, I see a hand way, way in the back. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Stand up. Mike is coming. Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Bernie.
Thank
Glad to have you here. My question, and it's not to be negative at all. We've had other candidates here, and one thing people have been asking, and I want to ask you, is if you don't get the nomination, will you support whatever Democrat gets the nomination?
Well, the answer is absolutely and positively yes. I've been very public about that. And I want to make one thing very clear, because sometimes, you see on... Oh, really? I didn't know that. I thought I ran all over the country into Nevada and everybody else working as hard as I humanly could to see that Hillary Clinton was elected President of the United States. All right, and one of the things I take a little bit of umbrage at, okay, is just that, all right? Hillary Clinton and I ran in a tough campaign. She won, I lost. After she lost, I endorsed her, and let me just tell you, because, I ran to, I think it was, I won't swear to you, but I think it was 13, 14 states. I did event after event after event in the states that the Clinton campaign asked me to go to. And I think if you ask Hillary Clinton, she will tell you that I worked probably harder than anyone else to try to do everything I could to win that election, because I knew how bad Trump would be. So that's what I did. I am looking forward to winning this election. If I win, I look forward to my 22 colleagues supporting me. If I don't win, I will support the winner. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of issues that separate and divide or that need attention, common sense gun legislation
Yep.
needs attention.
Yes.
We need safety for all as much as we need Medicare for all. You have a platform that does address some of the issues. Would you add to that platform support for safe storage or responsible storage for firearms, and also for extreme risk orders? In other words,
Extreme, I'm sorry?
risk, like red flag laws. That's not on your platform. That's the protection when somebody is in a crisis and removing access to guns from that person.
Something we will, the first one, yes, and the second one we'll certainly take a look at. Look, I'll tell you a story which will not shock you. All over the country, you know, when I go all over the country and I talk to younger people, there was a kid I talked to, I can't remember where he was, in South Carolina, I think. Big kid, like 6'2" or something. And he said, you know, I got to tell you, I and many of my friends are scared to go to school. And I hadn't realized, you know, when we grew up, school was a safe harbor, wasn't it? It's a place you socialize, you learn, you know. But that all over this country, think how horrible it is that kids are now scared, and every day in some state, in some city, there's a drill, right? And, you know, this is awful. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that I or anybody else that I know of has a magical solution. We got hundreds of millions of guns in this country today, including a lot of assault weapons, and you have a number of emotionally disturbed people, all right? That's not a good combination. So I think we got to do a couple of things. I think we have to be as aggressive as we can to make sure that guns do not fall into the hands of people who should not have that. And that means a significant extension of background checks, means we have to do away with the gun show loophole, which you are familiar with. It means to say we have to do away with the existing provision where you could walk into a gun show today and do the background check. You can buy 10 guns and you can sell it out to some gang member out there. We got to do away with that. And I'll tell you something else, not widely known. Way back when, 1988, I ran for the United States Congress in a three-way race in Vermont, ran for Congress. I was the only candidate at that point, a few years ago, to say that assault weapons are military weapons and should not be in the hands of civilians in this country. That was back in '88. I lost that election in a state which had no gun control at all right? I don't have to tell anybody in Las Vegas, God knows, you have suffered the worst mass killing in this country's history, I believe. So I don't have to tell you what a military-style assault weapon can do. Okay, so no magical answers, but we have to do everything that we can to address that and to make sure that the day comes sooner than later when children go to school and don't have to worry about being shot. Okay. Yes, sir, right there. Yes. The question is, can I talk about foreign affairs and do I have a solution to the Middle East crisis? God, if I had a solution to the Middle East crisis, I'd be the smartest guy in the world, and I don't. All right, but let me thank you for asking that. So let's talk about foreign affairs, military affairs. I don't know, lately I have been attacked by a number of media sources for my views on foreign affairs and military affairs. See? So let me be very honest with you. When I was a young man, long before I ever dreamed that I would be elected anything, okay, I, along with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and millions of others, marched and opposed the war in Vietnam. All right, and for those of you who are of my generation, you know what that war did to our generation. It destroyed, virtually destroyed our generation. 59,000 brave young men were killed in that war. Many came home addicted to drugs. You have Vietnam vets sleeping out on the streets in America today. Many who came home took their own lives. So I'm not going to apologize to anybody for having opposed that war. When I was in the House of Representatives and the issue of invading Iraq came up during the Bush administration, go to YouTube and hear what I said. And what I said, in essence, I do not believe Dick Cheney or John Bolton or the Bush administration when they told us that Saddam Hussein, a terrible dictator, had weapons of mass destruction. And I did everything that I could. I really did. Tried as hard as I could to prevent the United States from getting involved in that war. And all of you know the horrific impact of that war. So I don't make any apologies for that. A couple of months ago, I worked with conservative Republicans in order to get the United States out of the unauthorized, unconstitutional, and horrific war in Yemen. You know what's going on in Yemen? Yemen is a poor country, but as a result of the Saudi-led intervention in the civil war there, the United Nations estimates that some 200,000 men, women, and children, civilians, will be dead by the end of the year, and tens of thousands of children have already starved to death. And there is a real danger that that will turn into a mass famine. Worst humanitarian crisis in the United States caused by the dictator of Saudi Arabia who got intervened. We should not be in that war, and we do everything I can to get us out of that war. And lastly, some of you have been reading that this guy, John Bolton. Everybody know who John Bolton is? All right. John Bolton was one of the leading architects of the war in Iraq in the Bush administration. And he is one of the few remaining human beings on earth who actually believes that that war made sense. And now he thinks, based on how wonderful the war in Iraq was, that maybe we should go to war with Iran. I think that is about the dumbest idea that I've ever heard in my life. All right? And I will do everything I can as a United States Senator to prevent that. If we go to war in Iran, I think you are looking at an Orwellian nightmare of perpetual, never-ending warfare. All right, last point that I want to make is we have a president who, I mean, it's hard to believe, given our history, our belief in democracy and justice. We have a president who continually has conflicts with our allies around the world, whether it's Canada, Germany, UK, and yet cozies on up to the worst dictators in the world. All right? I want to do everything we can to prevent a war with North Korea, absolutely. And I don't fault Trump, by the way, for sitting down with Kim Jong-un. But you don't praise somebody who is running one of the worst dictatorships in the world. You can negotiate, don't praise. You don't praise Vladimir Putin. You don't bring the guy from Hungary here who is an anti-Semite. All right? So what we have got to do is have a foreign policy which stresses democracy and human rights, which says that we have to do everything we can to bring countries together, strengthen the UN, and do everything we can to prevent war and solve international conflict through diplomacy. Last point I'd make on that. Last point I'd make on that. Now, this may be wishful thinking, but this is what I would do as president. Right now, in the United States and around the world combined, the world is spending about $1.5 trillion on weapons of destruction, right? Tanks and guns and planes to kill each other. Meanwhile, you got climate change out there, which is one of the great threats that this planet has ever faced. My hope is, as president, that I would lead this world to maybe instead of putting money into weapons of destruction, let us come together to fight climate change rather than kill each other. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Wait for a mic. I think there's a mic on the way.
How do you feel about starting impeachment proceedings based on yesterday's testimony? As a Democrat, it's very frustrating to think we're just got to wait until you or one of your colleagues wins in 2020.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good question. All right. Here is Nancy Pelosi does not have an easy job. Okay, and that is one of the reasons she does not. Here are the dynamics there. I believe you got two conflicting tendencies there, and I think they can be resolved. Number one, this president is not above the law. No president is above the law. This president must be held accountable, and I believe that the Judiciary Committee should begin impeachment inquiries. Inquiries, all right? Now, that's not impeachment. That is to determine, it's the first step, to determine whether or not Trump has committed impeachable offenses. Now, you may not like Trump. I don't like Trump. That's not an impeachable offense. You got to do that. Okay. And so I support the beginning of those inquiries. But here is the danger, which I think Nancy Pelosi and many people are struggling with. It may well be that Donald Trump wants to be impeached because he knows that in the Senate, you know what you need? 2/3 of the United States Senate. You all know that. You need 67 votes to impeach Trump. And right now there are 47 Democrats, and not all of them today would impeach Trump. So to go through the scenario where you go through month after month of impeachment debate, let's just say, and I'm not sure that how it would turn out, if a majority would, but let's assume they do, comes to the Senate. And go through another period of time, and the Senate does not impeach Trump, which is likely. And the American people in the middle of all of that are saying, hey, I can't afford health care. My kid can't afford to go to college. What are you doing to the veterans, for the veterans of this country? What are you doing about climate change? Why aren't you raising the minimum wage? Why are you just worried about Trump all of the time? Do you understand my point? All right, so that is the dilemma. We cannot allow Trump or any other American president to be above the law, and we've got to pursue that. But if the challenge will be to walk down two paths simultaneously, not so easy, okay? We cannot make ordinary Americans think that we have forgotten working longer hours for lower wages, that they can't afford health care, that their kids can't go to college, that climate change is not a huge issue. You follow what I'm saying? So that is the difficult challenge that we face, not to fall, to do something that Trump, in fact, may end up wanting us to do. Yes, ma'am. There's a mic right behind you. You're right.
Thank you. Anna, thank you for your patriotism, too. You've been around a long time and worked hard for American people. Let's continue to address the elephant in the room. You have a lot of wonderful young people working in your campaign. You did last time. I'm sure there'll be way more this time. What I want to know is, how are we going to get all this wonderful legislation passed that probably everyone in the world wants to see us pass? Is there a strategy for overcoming, I hope I'll follow your lead here, for overcoming...
Hold the mic a little further away from you.
For overcoming the media circus that we are going to see again. I'm sure, I hope, your contingency has a strategy for addressing that, because all of the wonderful, you're a serious candidate and he's a buffoon. So he is going to do as he has always done and overwhelm everyone with things that actually everybody wants to hear what he has to say, because they just do, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. What are you going to do? What's your strategy? What will you,
Good. Okay.
please,
Hey,
please.
thank you for that excellent question. All right, that's a very good question. Look, let's not kid ourselves. How do I say this with 5 television cameras looking at me? You know, Trump may be crazy, but he is not a fool. is what you're saying. All right? He was a very successful reality TV guy, and he knows how to mitigate. That's true. That's true. And there is a reason why he spends half his day watching television. You would think a president had one or two other things to do, but that's what he does. You're absolutely right. This is what he pays attention to. And every tweet that he sends out, I don't know, was some outrageous tweet today. I don't know. I can't keep up with him. Okay? And that's what media focuses on. And that is a very legitimate and real question. And I'll tell you what I think. First of all, let me tell you that one of the reasons, this is very early in the campaign, but every serious poll that has been out there has me defeating Trump, in some cases by pretty good numbers. All right, so we should not be pessimistic about whether he'll be a tough candidate. All right, but I think he can be beaten. We did some polling a month or so ago in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, states he won. We were pretty far ahead of him in those states. I think we beat him for two reasons. Number one, we are in the process of putting together the strongest grassroots campaign that I think anyone has ever seen. We have over, as I mentioned earlier, 1 million volunteers right now. They're going to be knocking on doors all over this country. Number two, young people are the most progressive generation in the history of this country, and we should be very proud of those young people, all right? And every 3 young people that we register, 2 of them are going to vote in a progressive direction, all right? That means, and we're making progress. We are making progress. Historically, young people have voted in very low numbers. 2018, they went up. We got to make sure that they go up even higher, and we're going to do everything we can. These are young people who are anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobia, very concerned about climate change and education, everything else. We're going to work hard on that. The third thing is that we are going to go all over the country, and I was in the Midwest already, exposing Trump for the liar that he was. Look, if you were a worker in Michigan and your job was shipped to China or someplace, you wanted to hear what Trump had to say. If you couldn't afford health care, if you couldn't afford to send your kids to college, what he said made sense. Problem is, he lied. And we will expose him for the liar that he is. So add all of that together. And we also, by the way, have our own social media, which I urge all of you to pay attention to. We're not just dependent on the national media. So you raise the right issue, and we're very conscious of that. And we're doing everything we can to run a strong grassroots campaign, which will defeat him. Yes, ma'am.
So first of all, I apologize if I insulted you before, and I want to thank you for coming to Sin City. We all vote when we really care.
Oh, okay. I didn't take it as an insult. Okay.
Anyway, you just started to talk about the Middle East and didn't mention Israel. And that's very important to me,
Yes.
along with the anti-Semitism in this country, which I know has been going on way before Trump, but it's rampant even in our own Congress. So I'd love to hear about
It's not rampant in their own Congress. No, I don't accept
well,
that.
it's rampant in the world. And
It is rampant, and it's
it is
growing,
coming
and-
in our Congress. So I would like to hear what
Yes.
you have to say about that, please.
Well, as somebody who is Jewish, obviously it is an issue of concern to me. All right? But it is not just anti-Semitism. It is racism. It is sexism. It is a lot of ugly stuff. What Trump has done in an incredibly bad way, he has kind of lifted the veil. For years, it wasn't cool to be a racist or an overt racist or a sexist or a homophobe. But he has kind of lifted that veil. So it's okay. You want to march in Charlottesville as a neo-Nazi? You're a pretty good guy. It's okay. We like people on both sides. And when you do that, you unleash the worst instincts of people. Middle East is a very difficult issue, all right? But let me just say this, and you may disagree with me again, but you may. And then this is what I believe. I believe it is a very, needless to say, a very volatile area. I think the United States, for the sake of Israel, and I 100% support and defend Israel's right to exist in peace and security. But if that is going to happen, you need a even-handed policy toward the Middle East. It cannot just be pro-Israel. You got to recognize the reality of what life is in Gaza. You know what life is like in Gaza now? You got youth unemployment of 60 or 70%. People can't leave the area. Do you think that that is going to lead to sustained peace? I don't think so. It's not. We are the wealthiest country. Now, I know that is, you know, I get criticized for saying that a lot. All that I'm saying is I am pro-Israel, but I'm pro-Palestinian as well. Bring people together. We use the power of the United States and the resources of the United States to bring people together, what is a very difficult issue. Clinton tried to do something, Jimmy Carter tried to do something. This is tough stuff, and the leadership on both parts, whether it's Netanyahu or the Palestinian leadership, leaves much, much, much to be desired. Very difficult, so no easy solutions. Okay, maybe one last question. Gentleman right here. You got a mic coming.
Why can't we do as they do in Japan and in Europe and reprocess and recycle nuclear waste on the site? We don't want weapons-grade plutonium shipped to the test site on public highways and nuclear waste going through the highways in secret without any coordination with local first responders. If there's an accident, there's no antidote on the truck. The truckers are certified by DOT to do all sorts of things, but not to give first aid. The casks themselves, the plutonium casks, are only certified to withstand a 30-foot drop. And when you're assessing risks, you have to consider the worst-case scenario,
Sure.
not hypothetical or typical accidents.
Okay, let me just say, A, I agree with you. B, my old friend Harry Reid made it very clear to me that he thought, and I agree, that Yucca Mountain is not a safe repository for high-level nuclear waste. I agree with that. I do not believe that, you know, people disagree with me, maybe here. I believe that the future of energy in this country is a massive investment in wind and solar. And by the way, this state should be leading the country in solar. And you're not. That speaks to the power of the industry. But I agree with you, all right? And we're going to have to figure out, it is a tough issue. I'm just reading, you know, we got in my state, you got nuclear waste sitting right by the Connecticut River. Not a smart place for that waste to be. So you're right. No Yucca Mountain. Let's figure out a safe way that we can deal with this very dangerous material that lasts for zillions of years. Okay, I got to get going. But let me thank all of you for being here and just tell you what you already know. This is an unprecedented moment in American history. We have got to act in an unprecedented way. On issue after issue, the American people support us. And if we can prevent Trump and his allies from dividing us up, if we can stand together and support the winner of the Democratic primary, which I am pledged to do, I hope it's me, but if it's not, I will do that. And let's go forward together, not only to defeat Trump, that's terribly important, but to create the kind of nation that we as the wealthiest nation on earth should be able to have. People should not have to pay $1,300 a month for health care. Kids should not be able to go to college. We should be aggressively addressing climate change. So we got a lot of work in front of us. Let's go forward together. Thank you very much.